1776 is a startup incubator. We help startups get to the next level by connecting them with mentors, investment, and also like the courses and classes that they need to grow their business. But that's not what we're concentrating on today. That's just a little bit about my background. Going on. Ooh, that's not what we wanted. 1 second. Okay. So today, this is going to be kind of a story about family, location, time, and work culture. Hopefully this is going to be more large picture than what you're going to be doing for the rest of today. But it's kind of nice to start off on a lighthearted format and then work your way from there into the more nitty-gritty stuff. But hopefully what I'm going to depend on you guys on is participation. I'm going to be asking questions to all of you. I'm going to be actually using you guys as a base of statistics that I'm going to be showing here to see what the DC culture is compared to the rest of the US. Okay, so I'm going to start off with one question. Could you explain your job to your grandmother 15 years ago? How many of you think you could have done that? I've got 3 hands, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and a few in the back. So let's say we had about 12 people total out of, Anise, what do you think this room is? 450? Okay. Can somebody do that math? Because seriously, I'm not going to be able to do the math when I'm on the stage right now. So let's just say it's probably a really, really low number of people who could have described their job to their grandmother 15 years ago. How many do you think you could describe it now to your mother or your grandma? Okay, it's more. I'll say that looked maybe like 20% of the room. Niece, is that right? Okay, so we're getting higher. Now, let's talk about some of the reasons why that might be. So the point I'm about to make is now there's increasing chances that Ma and Grandma get it. Just in case you couldn't tell, that's my family. I'm of mixed culture. I'm Japanese and Hungarian, as you can see by the variations of people in this picture, and I'm very, very grumpy at like 6 a.m. in the morning, even when I was 10 years old. Okay, so the hypotheses I'm going to put out there is that technology is actually closer to our everyday lives, not just for the people in the room who work with tech, for everybody out there. So you have a combination of you use maps on your phone to get yourself to work on a daily basis. I don't know if I could get anywhere without Waze at this point. I depend on them for their traffic. Let's just say my commute can go anywhere from 30 minutes all the way to like last night, it was 2 hours. I depend on my map apps on a daily basis, and this is something that my mother also uses. And if anything, my grandmother might not use it now, but she's seen people using it, so she gets it. In addition, instead of just hailing taxis, we use apps on our phone to even do things like simple transportation, whether it's when the next bus is coming, how to hail transportation like a car service of some sort, or when the next metro is, or when there's delays. So the whole point is it's in our daily lives. Additionally, in our houses, we are using technology to help us control the temperature, even set the air conditioning before we get home from a big trip. It's just part of our daily lives, even in our homes. Additionally, we're using it for things like commerce, banking. We're using it for health purposes. And these are things, one of my friends, his dad had diabetes. He got his dad to start exercising more just by getting his dad a Fitbit. And his dad was in his 80s. So I'm just saying this is something that's in our everyday lives, and people get it, of all generations. It's not just the tech scene anymore. Okay, so let's just do more of a historical analysis to see why Grandma and Ma get this more today than they ever did before. So from the crowd, do you guys have any hypotheses or any thoughts on what industry trends were for developers and technologists back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, specifically around software development? There's a lot of other tech out there, but in this room, we're probably talking about software development. Go for it.
When I was in high school, if you were in the accelerated program, you could carpool over to the junior college and stand in line to punch 4 credit cards.
My dad was there, yes. Give me some. Ooh, do you know my dad started collecting slide rulers when he first got on eBay? He just like went in collector mode and he got himself like, I'll say it was about 9 or 10 different slide rulers at different stores, and he was just showing it to me, and I was like, we've got this whole calculator thing now, just to let you know. It was really funny. Okay, so what I'm going to argue is that back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it was all about infrastructure, setup, and machines. So all the my parents, I should also say, were software engineers. I know this is rare. Like my mom, they didn't even have software engineering programs in colleges at that point. She was technically an electrical engineer. My dad didn't finish college. He was what you would call a technician. So he learned the whole punch card things way back in the day. But during the 60s, 70s, and 80s, sorry about my mic, by the way. It seems to be a little bit clicky. 60s, 70s, and 80s, is about infrastructure and machines. So you've got like the major hires at that time were telecoms, and it would also be companies who made machines themselves. So you've got, and does anyone reckon, so I represented Apple there with this like tannish colored thing with little clicky keys. Does anyone know I chose this middle picture?
Microsoft's early guys?
Yes. Do you know which one's Bill Gates?
No.
The lowest left corner. It kind of was a surprise to me also. Okay, we're getting a little more modern. The 90s and early 2000s. What do you think were the major hiring trends for those types of companies and for software developers at that time?
They were getting ready for year 2000 to
You did have that. I totally forgot about that. I remember sitting there for like the turn of the clock and being like, is anything going to happen? Yep, there was definitely baking sort of scariness going on along with other industries as well. What else? Yes? Exactly. Web development was definitely there. Any other suggestions? I love how you guys are actually like participating. I was so afraid that I wouldn't get raised hands. Yep, is that a raised hand? Windows 98. Windows 98 was definitely on my computer at that time. Google Start. Yep. Yep. Early music days. You're right. Linux. I had Linux on my machine in college. I was so proud of myself. What? Oh, I just did a great reveal, sorry. Okay, so my argument was the major trends going on was, I'm going to call it was like the pull days. It's like the days of email, media, search, commerce, and ads, but these are the days of early adopters to the internet. In addition, the people who were using all these products, they always had to it was about trying to build these habits into their everyday lives. But they had to go to a website and say, hey, New York Times, give me the news of the day. Or they had to go to a search place and say, hey, I'm searching for this. Or go to Yahoo and say, do you guys have any groups around, I don't know, forestry and hiking or something like that? But you had to go to these sites and pull what you needed. Even these are like early days for things like Amazon, where you're like, I'm going to go to your website. Do you happen to have socks for me to buy? I'm not quite sure what your inventory is, but I'm going to go and check it out and pull from you first before I go and maybe have to go to an actual physical store. So these were industry trends at that point, but you needed to be sort of an early adopter or the early mainstreamers who are going out and checking these things out, but you had to try to, these early adopters, one thing about their personality is they're going to actually seek out and try something new, and they're seeking out something to pull into their lives. All right. 2010s, much more modern. Any thoughts on what we're seeing nowadays for the types of companies and technologies and how this gets integrated in our lives? Remember, the whole entire thing that I'm going for is what are the trends nowadays that are pulling now mothers and grandmothers to get what we do? Sorry? Apps. Apps are definitely part of it. Texting, yes. You guys are all hitting on my themes. This is amazing. Yes.
Pictures of the grandkids.
Aww. I'm actually going to show a picture of my daughter in a second, so yes. Social networking. Yes. Okay, you guys are hitting on everything. Okay, so I'm going to say we went from the 90s to the 2000s to what I'm going to call like the days of the pull. So this is, or sorry, the days of the push. So it's not us going to these different places and pulling down information. Instead, these things are getting actually pushed into our lives. We've got like apps that are reminding us. They're sending us notifications to our phones. Through social media, they're pushing us little notifications of like, this person has done something new. And it's not hitting us just through our phones. It's hitting us through email and from many different directions. So we're like, it's getting pushed into our lives. And this is a positive. We don't have to put effort into this anymore. Before we had to seek out and make something like going to the New York Times on a daily basis a habit in our lives. But now it's getting tweeted out to us, the latest articles and news. It's getting pushed to us that a friend wants to connect to us. This is not something where we have to go and look at email and say who's connected. Instead, it's getting pushed to us by things like text. In addition, like think about Amazon. Amazon's even gone through a transition from the days of us going to Amazon looking for something to buy to now we have little buttons on our fridge that says, yes, I need Gatorade, go send it to me. Or you even have like the whole subscribe and save things where it just like pushes stuff to my doorstep. I don't even have to go there and reorder toilet paper or something else. In addition, even when it comes to fitness, we have reminders on our hands all the time and we get push notifications when we are hitting our points of fitness, like when I get to my 1,000 steps a day or 10,000 steps a day. Okay, so let's run through some numbers. So I brought some like qualitative sort of things about this is trends that I think I've seen throughout times, but let's actually get to numbers. So I'm going to look at it just in regards to big data. Nowadays, like right now, sorry I wasn't able to look at this for all software development. This was the easiest stat I could pull for the time. But in terms of the top 2 hiring industries right now in big data, this is kind of expected. You're still going to see the professional, scientific, and tech services. It's expected, and also information services. But what is the other half of the spectrum? You've got manufacturing, you've got retail, you've got sustainability and waste management, you've got finance and insurance, you've got wholesale trade, and you've got educational services. These are things that all of us understand. My mom understands it. Well, she was a software developer, but her side, my grandmother understood it, and she was an English teacher, which is funny because she was Hungarian. But these are things that most of us can actually get. They are part of regular lives. They are not techie, they're not geeky, but these are the areas where technology is used and where there's a huge amount of jobs, like job openings in these areas. So it's just kind of an indication that the industries that are in our everyday lives, these are the ones that are hiring us nowadays, and now we can go and explain our jobs to our parents, and this is a big deal. When I come home from my day, I actually want to like not compartmentalize what work is. Work is a big part of my life. I want to be able to explain it to my friends. I want to be able to brainstorm ideas, think about business models, but if they don't get what I do, I can't do that. So this has made my life better. I don't have a compartmentalized job versus social life. Instead, they are all together as one. That has made me happy. Okay, so this is just like overall a really hard to read slide. Hate these types of things, but I'm going to break it out to say right now, just in terms of big data, 46% of the jobs out there are in tech fields, but the other 54%, and this is a growing trend, are in our day-to-day live type of industries. Okay, so that was very macro level. Now we're going to get more to our everyday lives of the people in this room. Okay, so I've talked about how me having a job in an industry that actually I can talk about with my friends and my family has been impactful to me. But there's other ways, like just down to my day-to-day life, where like the trends of the development industry are impacting me in a really, really positive way. So that's my daughter. She's kind of adorable, but I'm totally biased in saying that because I'm her mom. But let's just say I'm a mom. I am a single mom. I need flexibility in my life. And there have been so many major trends in the tech industry that have led me to be still a solid developer, but have an amazing work-life balance. So let's get to that. So right now, in our industry, we are seeing huge trends towards location and time flexibility. So we've seen flexible hours, flexible days, the ability to work from home during sickness, snow, or even on your vacation. Let's just say that's part of my life. I think on every single vacation I've taken in the past 3 years, I've brought my laptop and I've done a small amount of work every single day. I'm not saying it's a suggested thing that everyone should do, but it's kind of like one of those things that has become part of my everyday life, and I don't even regret it. I actually love being in touch with work because I love what I do. Parenthood. So when my daughter needs to go to a doctor, do I want to do things like drive her to the doctor and then to school and then another 45 minutes to work and then from 45 minutes to work back to her school, pick her up and then come home? Or do I just want to go to like home, which is 10 minutes away, and start working there and save myself a huge chunk of time? The other thing is like location flexibility. Let's think about cost of living. The DC area, it's really, really expensive, and not just DC. But if you have the ability to live farther away from your work just because you have this flexibility of working from home, if you have the ability to avoid traffic because you can have flex hours and let's say go in at 10 and leave at 4 and then take the rest of your hours from home, these are all things that go into work-life balance and make life really doable. Okay, let's go through some numbers again. First of all, who here worked in 1995? I will put my hand down there. So we've got, it's lower than I thought. I will say about 8% of the room worked back in 1995. Who of you guys who worked in 1995 ever telecommuted? Whoa, okay, so that's actually really high. So from what I was seeing, I will say it was half of that 8% of the room, which is great. I wasn't expecting that. From the stats I was looking at, only 9% of professionals occasionally telecommuted back in 1995. I will say, looking at my parents from back then, it could be the nature of their jobs. They were either at home not working or they were at work. They didn't have that option of telecommuting. Because, I mean, you had these gigantic desktop computers. The chances of your work environment, of what you needed to do stuff at work, being emulated at home to get the same sort of things done, it's a little bit harder to do way back then. The idea that sometimes you'd be able to bring home papers and do some of your work that way, but depending on the nature of your job, especially as a software developer, it wasn't always easy. Let's think about 2004. So the stat I found, and this goes into my everyday life as well, 29% of federal government employees actually use their Flextime option. This is really, really high, like especially in the DC area. If you think about how many employees we have around here in the federal government, think about how much we are probably saving in terms of traffic capacity just by these people staying at home 2 days a week or taking off every other Friday. Have you guys ever noticed a trend that Friday traffic seems to be a lot better than any other day of the week? Like me going into DC, it takes about half the time to get to work on a Friday than any other day. It's because, for example, one of my really good friends, she gets to take every other Friday off. And she has expanded hours for all the other days that she works. I think she works 1 extra hour every other day and gets to take every other Friday off. My mom, she works for the federal government. She gets to work from home 2 days a week. They're the same days every week, but her getting to do this is huge in terms, like she lives in Annapolis, she works in DC. Think about what she's saving in terms of time of commute. 2015 to 2016, 50% of the workforce now have telework compatible jobs. This is not just software development. This is all jobs out there. That was much higher than I expected. Slightly less, 37% of professionals occasionally telecommuted to work. This actually probably matches what I would have expected. I'm sad it doesn't match that 50%, because if 50% of the workforce have the ability to do so, there has to be a reason why there's a gap there. I don't know if it's expectations in terms of culture of the workplace or what, but there is still a gap. And in terms of that, 2.8% of the workforce telecommutes over 50% of the time. Now, I will admit, from my specific work environment, and admittedly, I work with startups where money is tight. I work with a development team that's in Portugal, and another one of my developers is in San Francisco, and another one in New York City. So for us, location doesn't matter at all. But I was actually surprised that this number was as low as it is, based off of like what I've seen in the startup scene. But now let me bring it to the room. What percentage of this room telecommutes occasionally? So that looks to be about 40%, which goes to the numbers that I'm seeing here. For those people who don't telecommute occasionally, what are the reasons why? Don't you ever work from your couch, like in front of your TV as opposed to in the basement? That's hilarious. Anybody else? Yeah.
My employer really values face-to-face.
I get that. And we're actually going to be talking about that in a little bit. So I will say that I'm working with employers who initially started off all on the same floor of the same building in a small space. But now we've got campuses all over the place. And it's been a huge cultural shift to get us to actually think in a virtual first sort of way. I'm going to go through what those types of things are. How many of you guys in the room telecommute over 50% of the time? So that looks to be, I'm going to say, maybe 3 to 4% of the room, which is kind of aligned to what they show here. So that makes sense? Okay, so I've made lots of arguments up until now in the past slides about why this is good for me. This is me being selfish. I love the fact that my job, I can work from anywhere. I can work any hours of the day. This is great. But this is not just good for me. It's not just about us being selfish as developers. This is actually good for the companies that we work for. Okay, let's go into the idea of, again, the team location and time flexibility, what this brings to companies. First of all, companies can start with this idea. Companies can start hiring expertise from everywhere. Who's to say that the next Google Cloud expert that you need on your ops team is going to be available in DC for the price point that you need? As opposed to opening up where you guys are hiring from to a more virtual-friendly thing, so you can like look into teams that are in Europe or in Asia or somewhere else in the other parts of the United States. You guys will get a much bigger pool of candidates with possibly higher expertise if you were willing to look outside of your local areas. Also, less turnover. So I have multiple friends who have gotten to the points due to family circumstances or just in terms of where they wanted to live in their lives, where they want to go or they need to go somewhere else. Do they need to quit their job that they've been at for 3 to 5 years just due to family circumstance or due to like change in like what you want to do or where you want to live? That's kind of a hard decision to make that you have, but nowadays I will argue that workplaces can give the option that they can continue working in the same job. And as an individual, this is nice. This means I don't have to just transition to a new city. I can at least keep one part of my life stable, which is really nice. You can get more, like some of these people are getting more work done when they get to work from home. I fall victim to this myself. Every single time I need to quote unquote concentrate, I work from home. I don't have to context switch with people interrupting me. There's not nearly as much distractions going on around me. I have a lot of events that happen on the 1776 campus, and I'm not distracted by anything at home. I don't have to context switch. I can get my job done much better. And there's also things like cost of office and cost of talent that we can think about as well. Numbers. I really like numbers, and you'll see this as we go forward. So here's some numbers. Like, to raise or not to raise, like, it's really interesting, but 30% of professionals out there in the software industry would choose to work from home versus a raise. So think about this. Like I said, I'm a mom. Think about if an employer, when they see one of their employees expecting, whether they're the mom or the dad on either side, what if you were to tell that employee proactively when you're talking about compensation and things like that, like you have the flexibility to work from home for the next year. You're going to, first of all, make the person feel valued. You're going to make them happy that they don't have to like think about the cost to their family life every single time they're doing work. And chances are they are going to see that as a huge part of their compensation package, and they're not going to think about the difference in raises that they get from that point, because they know that they are getting a quality of life. This was surprising to me. 30% of people would actually choose a pay cut of 10% to work from home. That was astonishing to me, but it's something that we should think about as employers. Quitters be gone. So every single time a member of your team quits, from the company perspective, you're losing 10 to 30K per quitter. That's a lot of money. So if you think about how much time your team spends in hiring, so those are hours with their, if you think of their salary divided by hours, and it's a lot of money. And also when you bring a new person on, they're not going to be super productive from the beginning. They need to learn up to their job. This takes resources from your existing team, and it takes that person not working at their full capacity. This is all money. Also, 14% of Americans change jobs due to commute. How many people here have changed jobs due to commute? So I'm seeing maybe, that was slightly higher once we got to the back. Maybe about 5% of the room has changed jobs due to commute at some point or another. I actually haven't changed jobs due to commute, but when I'm choosing my next job, commute is always a factor to me. So if a company can reduce a number of people who quit, because let's say, again, they are quitting because of family circumstances, either in a different, like they have family needs in a different city, or they have family needs at home because of an expecting baby or anything like that. If you give them flexibility, chances are they're going to stick around longer. So I have a product director I work with really closely, and he always just like stares at me and the other engineers on the team. He's like, can't you just do more faster? Every single time we look at our product roadmap, and I'm like, it just stresses me out like crazy. But the whole point is, from letting people work from home, you can actually do this, which is really strange. Apparently there is a 63% reduction in unscheduled absences from people getting the allowance to work from home. In addition to that, you've got a 30 to 40% increase in productivity from teleworkers. And it's probably because they don't have to context switch nearly as much. Open offices or no offices. So apparently, for those employers that let people work from home 100% of the time, not all of their employees, but a subset of their employees, they save on real estate. In addition to that, for every employee who full-time they work from home, it apparently saves employers about $10K a year. This is really significant money. Now think about if you let them work from home, they're already happier. Let's say you can give them a bigger salary because you were saving that amount of money. They're going to be even happier. They have a bigger bank account, plus you're getting better productivity out of them, and they are happier. Okay. So this has been great. We've seen major changes in the industry. Now we can talk about our jobs to our families. It's like part of our social lives in addition to our work life. Our work lives have gotten better as well. So because we have flexible times, we have flexible locations that we can be working from, and our companies are saving money. So this is great for everybody, right? Does it come at no cost? No, there's been a cost. And we've had to really adapt in terms of our company culture to get us to this point. So I'm going to say, out with the old. What was the old before? I will say old office culture, especially in the dev world, and all parts of the world, I would say. You were really depending on serendipity and synchronicity. What do we need to move to now? We have to move towards more transparency and asynchronicity. And so when I was creating these slides, this was asynchronicity was underlined in red, so that was probably an indication that this is not a word at all. So, start using it. Make it a trend, and then it'll get added to my word dictionary. Okay, so how have we done this? Collaboration and communication. So the old ways that we would collaborate and communicate with our teams, they relied on email. So there's a lot of negatives to email. Let's say you bring on a new member of your team. You have a lot of context in your email inbox. How are you going to get them up to date for everything that has been shared through email communication? It's really hard to. You don't want to start forwarding emails around, and how are you going to even search for that to forward it to the new employee? You also have a loss of communication when a person leaves through email. Like, you can go and sift through all of their email, but that's a little bit tedious. You also, in the old days, you relied on a lot of desktop documents. I will say it's not just the old days. I can't get my finance team to get off of Microsoft Excel. And it's one of those things where, like, if I could collaborate more with them on those spreadsheets, that would be great, but it's really hard when it's just on their computer. The water cooler when it comes to communication. People really relied on those informal discussions, and I will say that those are hugely valuable in the workplace, and I'm not putting them down, but it's something we have to move away from, and we have to think about how to adapt to it when it comes to our new work culture with telecommuting and flexible hours. So what are the ways that we're moving towards? We're moving towards things like Slack and HipChat. There's probably a ton of other types of software out there that allows for us to have transparent conversations around specific topics, bringing the right people in, and then sharing them out with other members of your team later on when they join. In addition, you have the ability to search these conversations, which has been so nice. You can attach documents and design things. This has been a great way to have transparent conversations around company products, topics, culture, and things like that. We also are moving towards things like shared documents, where you can collaborate on them at the same time. Let's just say in my company, right now we have campuses in Dubai, New York, DC, San Francisco, Crystal City. We have lots of meetings where we have to, like, agree on the same types of things that we're doing. So not only are we in video conference meetings, but we are all in the same Google Doc, and I see tons of faces at the top. And it's worked marvelously for us. We also have to make time, instead of relying on things like going out for coffee and the water cooler, we have to make time for things like one-on-ones and team travel, because this type of thing is still hugely important. You have to keep those lines of communication open. You can't just rely on it happening on your tools like Slack and HipChat. You actually have to make time to solicit feedback from every member of your team, get people across different teams talking to each other, but you have to have forcing functions around this now. You can't just rely on people bumping into each other in a hallway. Meetings. Okay, so this is like literally my company when it comes to meetings. Not the most flattering picture of me, but it's realistic. So we used to rely on meetings being in conference rooms, around the water cooler, like I said before. We used to have like these set hours so that you could have meetings between like 9 and 5 p.m. And in your meeting rooms, they would have whiteboards where you guys would collaborate and draw together and view things. We have to move off of this to things like video conferences constantly, screen sharing and collaborative documents like I've mentioned before, and also having things like core hours, but core hours might mean something very different. So with my team, like I said, in Portugal, my development team specifically in Portugal, New York, and San Francisco, we have so many time differences going on that let's just say our core hours are between 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Those are the only hours that people in my team have to work. And all my meetings are during that time, which makes me very, very hungry when it comes to, 1 p.m. I am quite hangry. Okay, project management. We've had to move off of the idea of sticky notes and Kanban, and you, as a developer, would go and pick up a note. It was so satisfying. You pick up a sticky note from the wall, you move it over to another place, and then you would feel that sense of progress. We can't do that type of thing anymore in a virtual environment. You have to rely on software to do this, but that's been a great shift forward, because to sticky notes, I couldn't append design documents. I couldn't do things like have a collaborative discussion and have comments on it. But moving to software to manage this has been great. Less satisfying than moving a piece of paper, but still good for my team. We used to have stand-up meetings, and the idea is you would have a stand-up 15 minutes a day, give progress on what you're doing. Everybody's actually physically standing so that they would get tired before they would talk too long. But instead, you have to do this over a video hangout, which still works. And you just have to be a little bit more structured about moving the meeting along and keeping people on task. Yes. So next thing is around product design and management. So we used to be able to do things, like I said, you use a whiteboard, you draw out flows there. Then you would have drawings and printouts pasted all over the place to show beautifully what you guys are working towards as a team. But instead, we've had to move to a much more collaborative approach online. So you have things like InVision and Balsamic and like using a bunch of different types of cloud storage to make sure that people are collaborating on the same design documents. But this has been great. This means that I can send a whole entire flow of what needs to be developed to a developer in Portugal. They can look at it at their own time. They can add their own comments. They can click through the flows and interact with it. They don't need to be in the same room as me. So that's it for me today. Anise, do we want to like go through some of the stats again of like where we are today as a group? So like, what were some of the stats that we collected? Yep.
Whereas now we're at least at like 25%.
So that's a little bit better. Hopefully, let's say in 10 years from now, if I gave the speech again, let's hope that we are closer to 50% at that point. And a bunch of us like to telecommute. I personally, I'm going to raise my hand to that one. So anyway, thanks for reflecting, guys. I just wanted to go through the large picture just to show where we have moved as a software industry and as a developer group and culture for the last 40 years. And now I'm going to let you guys spend the rest of your day on much more, probably true to the daily nature of your job, technical things going forward.